Namaskara, Namaste. A happy welcome to Maitreya, Echoes of Wisdom. I, Dr. Smitha.prabhu, extremely happy and privileged to have Mr. Eshwar Sundaresan with me today.
Thank you so much, Smitha, for having me. Hearty namaste to all your viewers. Hello, I'm Eshwar Sundaresan. I am a practicing counselor, a trainer in corporates, educational institutes, and other places, a ghostwriter for the last 10 years, and before that, a writer of my own books. And during my spare time, I function as a freelance journalist, and I do a lot of other things that take me out of my comfort zone on a daily basis. What I like is to make sure that each day is unique and no day unfolds just like the day before. So every day I wake up and I have a different kind of life in front of me.
Yes, Eshwar, you have had a lot of experience when it comes to IT and also an array of topics and an array of areas where you worked. How did this shift happen and when did it happen? How did you think that, okay, let me just go out of the framework? I don't want to get a paycheck every month. I'm going to do something on my own. How did it happen?
It's a good question. I think nothing changed essentially from the beginning of my life. I was 8 when I wrote my first short story. It was based on something happening in my family in that moment, and obviously at the age of 8 I was not capable of articulating beyond a particular level, but after I finished that story I felt a high, and it was almost like a calling from within me. It was as if I had found my mission in life, and I knew I wanted to be a writer. But by the time I was 15, I realized that my family was struggling financially, and it would be better for my family if I were an engineer rather than a writer. So I did all the normal things that you'd expect, scored well in 10th and 12th, got into engineering, got a campus job, and eventually made my way into the IT industry, serving Fortune 500 companies, mainly in North America. So that was the path, but it was a path with a clear exit plan. It was not as if I discovered late in life that I wanted to do something else. Once I felt that I had secured my family sufficiently and that I could move forward and start living life on my own terms, I did that. And it was very uncommon back then because it was 2003 and a lot of people in the IT industry had not felt at that time that they had earned enough to quit.
That's been a major shift for you. I think for your parents as well, right? To think that, okay, my son is going to do something different.
Yes.
And then it's like a blind turn. You don't know where you're heading. What do you say to youngsters today who want to do so much in life, but they fear to even shift the thoughts in the mind?
Right. You're right that the impact was quite profound on my family. A lot of people, a lot of my friends thought I had lost my mind. I had a very kind boss who essentially told me, I'm going to give you a sabbatical of 3 months. Go cool your mind and come back a sane person because what you're doing is insane. And because everybody else was leaving for a different job or leaving for higher education, here I was saying that, I know I want to be a writer. The path ahead of me is very dark. I do not know what's going to happen. And that's going to be true for any human being who is starting off on a quest which is unusual, off the beaten path, right? And if any youngster is watching and actually wants advice on this, I would ask them to examine whether they are intrinsically okay with not having material success. That if material success happens to come in their way when they are pursuing their passion, that's a bonus. But ask yourself, is your passion, is that calling so strong that you would be happy and content in your life without material success coming your way? And if the answer to that question is yes, then you will be able to deal with all the uncertainties that come in the way.
So very well said, Ishwar. I mean, to try, there's no harm in trying. So that's what is important. Today's children have this thought of, okay, I want to do something different, but they fear. Like you said, it requires a lot of confidence. It's okay to go in the dark, to figure out what's ahead. Of course, you find the light ahead. You said you had a very kind boss.
Yeah.
Talking about bosses and IT and empathy, how important is empathy? I can see you also have a lot of empathy, and that's your favorite topic. I think even in our counseling class, we had this topic of empathy where you did explain to us, and then such a good lecture on empathy. How important is empathy in today's life?
No, it's extremely important, and it is also an extremely misunderstood concept. When I did the class for you, whatever content I had for empathy, now I have three times as much content, and I still feel like I'm just about discovering this idea called empathy. It's so difficult to articulate, and I think one of the ways in which we learn empathy is by failing to empathize. That there is this myth that if you're a practicing counselor, you're perfect all the time, your relationships are always harmonious, and you're always saying and doing the right things, which obviously is one of the biggest myths of all. And so you learn through your experiences, and if life has thrown you some adversities, I think it becomes easier to empathize, because having gone through extreme hardships, one stops being so judgmental about people being in adverse situations. And I think the converse is also true, that if you have had a very smooth life throughout, what I call a linear life, wherein everything is going according to plan, it is also very easy to succumb to the idea that you have stumbled upon some magic formula for success and happiness, and those who are struggling are somehow not smart enough to discover that.
Absolutely. I mean, the more we are in our comfort zone, okay, I don't need anything for me to show people that, okay, I'm doing this or I'm successful. But the minute when I was out of my comfort zone, then I realized there's so much potential. Of course, there was a lot of hardships and there was a lot of challenges. I think that it's all worth it, right?
Absolutely. If you ask me if there is something that I miss from having quit my IT industry, there are two things that I miss. The money, of course,
Yes.
right? It would be foolish to say that one doesn't miss the money. I would have been worth 100 times more than what I am now had I stayed on in IT. I was growing quite fast. And also the opportunity to experience new cultures, travel around the world. So, so when you have an alternate path, I think you have to also figure out what are the ancillary things that you want in your life. Okay, so I want to be a writer, I want to be a counselor. But along with that, what are your other non-vocational goals? And try and integrate those goals into your life's plans.
True.
It may not be very easy to do that, but it is possible.
Absolutely. Coming to EQ and IQ. So there's a lot of importance given to intelligence quotient. Not many people know the importance of emotional quotient. So what exactly is emotional quotient and how do we apply in our daily lives?
Right. Well, this is a topic that has been discussed at length, I think, out in the media. They say that IQ gets you into the building. So the first campus interview, the first job that you apply for, IQ is important. Whether you're able to grasp a particular concept, that is important. But as you rise in your career, or even as you progress in life, EQ becomes increasingly important. Your ability to deal with complex situations, your ability to navigate through relationships. Because end of the day, whether you are an IT professional or a counselor or a cricketer, a lot of your success, a lot of your harmony depends on the health of relationships around you. And that harmony is created by this thing called EQ. There are many ways to define it. I like Goldman's way of the 5 pillars of emotional quotient, which is self-awareness, management of emotions, motivation, social skills, and empathy.
Empathy, oh yeah. Okay.
We missed out the big one.
True.
So, learning all of these skills, practicing them in unison, and also constantly introspecting, being connected with yourself is a great thing. Because no matter where you go, that is what contributes to a leadership mindset.
They also say that if you're too emotional or attached to your job, is it in relation to how empathetical you are or is it different?
Well, maybe what they mean is that somebody is willing to take decisions without any regard to consequences because they are so much in love with what they do. and that may backfire. So passion in itself is a great thing, right? It contributes, it fuels your progress. At the same time, the inability to channel your passion and to use it constructively can have consequences.
Yeah.
Now you see somebody like a Virat Kohli is extremely passionate,
True.
and you can see that passion every moment he's on the field. However, when the bowler is delivering the ball, he's perfectly still, his mind is calm, and he's thinking about just this delivery. He's not allowing his passion to cloud his judgment for the most part.
Absolutely.
So that would be a great example of how you can be passionate while also knowing how to regulate that passion.
Very well said. Coming to IT, our founder of Infosys, Shri Narayan Murthy sir, has given a statement that India is lacking in productivity. We need to work 3 shifts. Globally, because all countries are progressing, we are somewhere lagging behind. What is your take on that?
I think Mr. Murthy said something about the state of the economy being such that the youth of the country must scale up and work lengthy hours. And it surprised me, of course, when I saw the statement in the media, because when I myself was an employee in this company, he was saying the exact opposite. He would say, work 8 hours and go home and spend time with your loved ones and cultivate yourself. And back then that felt very funny because I was in this company and I couldn't go home till 2:33 in the night every single day. And I was wondering, who are these employees who are going home at 5 o'clock and having work-life balance? So I do not know what was the motive behind what he said, but from a purely mental health standpoint, it is a recipe for disaster. To say that you can stretch yourself to that extent and you can prioritize economy or professional success over your own inner world is not something that I would advise, and this is what leads to burnout.
Exactly, needs to burn out. Maybe 5 years, 10 years down the line, the productivity is going to definitely go down, I feel. If it's 70 hours and 3 shifts.
Yeah. How long can you, let's say you have a Mercedes, even a Mercedes or one of the hardiest cars, whatever that brand is, for how long can you drive it on the highway at 150 kilometers per hour? At some point in time, it's going to break down. You're going to stop by the side of the road and get a mechanic to have a look.
Absolutely.
And that's what we do as counselors.
Absolutely. Coming to our today's generation, they struggle so much to get into an engineering college or a medical college. They're stuck there. I mean, when you look at the overall suicide rates, 8 lakhs people in the world globally kill themselves every year, and 1.5 lakhs in India itself. Is it the pressure of the society, or is it the pressure to fulfill their dreams, or is it the burnout? What's happening to our generation, today's generation, I can say?
Yes, that's a good question, and I have front seats to this phenomenon because I counsel a lot of adolescents and young adults, hundreds of them so far, and 2 things strike me about this generation. A, they are so much smarter than I was at their age. They are well informed, they are better skilled, better articulation comes out of them. They are so much more confident. But the one thing that I wish they had more of is resilience. The ability to endure failure and to bounce back from it. And a lot of the youth of today, when they falter for the first time, it seems like the end of the world. Now, this also is due to certain parenting models that are employed. Now, imagine a child that has never heard a no from parents or family.
True.
And imagine miraculously, this family has been preparing the road for the child, not preparing the child for the road. And eventually this child becomes an adult, goes out into the world and faces rejection from society. And it feels so alien because they have been the center of their own universe for such a long time. And now somebody is telling them that they won't get what they need right away. So if they are used to constant acceptance, constant fawning, and the complete misinterpretation of this idea called self-esteem.
True.
right? And if the boss is the very first person in their life who's saying that,
No.
saying a no or saying they are supposed to do this, they are accountable for something, that becomes a problem. Now, second is that this entire irony that we are living through, that in the age of social media, when connections are supposed to be so much more, what people are experiencing increasingly is loneliness, a sense of being misunderstood, or feeling as if there is not a single person in the world who really cares about them or connects with them. So you take all of this together and you take this thing together in a public sphere using social media. What you are exposed to constantly is the world telling you that everybody is having fun, everybody is successful and happy, and that those waves of data come and splash against your inner world wherein there is a lot of dissatisfaction.
True.
So, and maybe resilience is actually coming down, because when I look at my grandparents, I felt that they were so much more resilient. They could just make do with so little. Even earth-shattering events would happen, they would take it in their stride. So it's almost as if, as a species, our ability to bounce back and endure failure is coming down generation after generation.
I think that is so true. Is the resilience. When I look at my daughter, she's 19. Like you said, there is a no factor in the house. So now, after listening to a lot of people about parenting and other things, of course, the one thing that you said, prepare your child for the road, for the path. Don't make a path. That is so true. I think all parents today's generation, like me, okay, we have given the best for our kids. We have the best college, the best ever possible everything. But what's happening in the child's mind, we don't know. Like it's so alien for us to understand what the child is going through, because it's a total different generation, like the Gen Z, what we call. But I do understand that they're so clear on what they want.
Absolutely, and they are so much more skilled,
Skilled,
so much smarter than at least I was when I was their age.
Absolutely. Talking about marriages, talking about relationships, today's generation, they don't want to get committed. Somewhere they don't want that responsibility, no commitment. They don't want to have children. Predominantly, the graph is going higher when you look at the family dynamics is different. What is your take on that?
I think we are evolving. Society is changing rapidly, and institutions within society also have to keep pace with the changes. The institution of family has to adapt. The institution of marriage especially has to adapt. The days of all marriages being more or less the same, with the roles of the two people involved clearly defined, those days are over.
Okay.
So
is
now,
it good for the society? I mean, the way they're heading?
it is what it is. I wouldn't want to look at it through the prism of good or bad. It is what it is. What it means is that there needs to be an evolution of this particular institution. So there is a challenge to a lot of concepts. For example, the concept of monogamy, which was a given, like every marriage will be based on monogamy. Now, as a counselor, I am witness to how many of these marriages are either consciously with both people veering away from this model, or one person secretly doing it behind the other person's back. So extramarital affairs are on the rise.
True.
And instead of judging this phenomenon, I would like to understand it. And what I am beginning to sense is that the needs of people have become different. Back then, there was a very stable family structure which gave you that sense of anchoring, you know. Now today, all expectations are projected onto the marital partner. You need to be my confidant, you need to be my lover, you need to be my financial provider, you need to be my sibling, my parental figure, my child, everything all rolled into one. So the expectations are too much for any relationship to bear. And in that context, it is possible to visualize people being feeling unfulfilled in certain ways and then wanting something outside of the marriage. Now, for certain relationships, that is totally unacceptable. It leads to the collapse of the relationship itself. But what I'm also noticing is that couples are evolving, are understanding, are changing their mindset about these things. And one of the worst things that we can do at this juncture is to convert this into a culture war and say, this is against our culture, this is not who we are.
But coming to the family dynamics, the concept of marriage has stayed ever since. How is it that it's evolving in terms of what today's generation are doing?
Well, the institution of marriage is actually not as old as we would like to believe. Because if you really look at the evolution of us, even if you go back to Cro-Magnon to now, the institution of marriage has been popular for a very brief period, for a blip of a second. For us, it's thousands and thousands of years. But in the larger scale of things, do those thousands of years matter? There is a desire. There is a desire for adventure. There is a desire for connection. There is a desire for fulfillment through a profound interaction with another human being. And in previous generations, probably there was neither the opportunity,
There was no opportunity.
or there would be censorship, self-censorship. Everything would be seen through a moral lens, and therefore there was no way that people will enact on their deepest impulses, or if you want, darkest impulses. Today, people feel a lot more adventurous and have the liberty to pursue these options, and you see this happening.
True.
So, when a couple comes to me for counseling, I do not go with a template saying this is what a marriage is supposed to be. The first thing I try to find out is, what do you think a marriage is? What is your marriage fulfilling, and what is your marriage failing in? So every couple has to define that dynamic by themselves uniquely in a manner that is mutually satisfactory.
Well said, I think well put across. Looking at divorces in India, love marriages are on higher rates. When you say love, when you say that connection with the other human being, when you say you feel connected to the other human being, how is it that love is a factor that is not very stable when it comes to other things in life and then leads to a divorce? Compared to an arranged marriage, you don't know the person, you see the person and you understand the person, maybe closer to marriage date or maybe after marriage, I can see. What is the significance of love marriage and an arranged marriage, and why is the divorce higher in love marriage?
Well, let's first understand this idea of romantic love. It is such a modern idea. Back in the olden ages, if there was a Romeo and Juliet or Heer Ranja or Shirin Farhad, all of these stories, the reason why these stories are memorable is because there were such few instances, and these people who could sacrifice everything at the altar of romantic love were special.
True.
But the mainstreaming of romantic love happens only after the dawn of individualization. Democracies, republics spring around the world, and suddenly the individual starts mattering, and suddenly the individual starts exploring romance, because before then the resources were not available, the money or the time or the effort that was required, or the freedom in society. So romantic love as a notion and as a basis for marriage is a very modern concept, right? Now let's look at the phenomena of divorce. I do not know statistically whether love marriages result in more divorces,
but it says so, the survey says so,
the survey,
that love marriages end up in divorces.
More often.
More often.
Yeah. So, so let's take that at face value. But I think the notion of divorce itself is no longer a taboo. It's the same thing that I spoke about a moment ago, that previous generations, we do not know how they would have lived their lives if they felt that they had the liberty to pursue certain paths. So today, the fact that people can walk out of toxic relationships is to be celebrated. Now, whether this results in the other extreme of people unwilling to work on relationships when they become difficult, now that's something of concern, that you say, oh, the smallest thing that goes wrong in a relationship, I'm walking out.
I've heard, I also read in the newspaper some time back that not in India, outside, the husband didn't, take the toothpaste correctly. So it's like all messy, so she's done with him. And there was a divorce because of that. How stupid is that?
Yeah. So, yes, so we need to examine that. And as mental health professionals, we can help people to upskill themselves so that they are able to deal with such vagaries in relationships. At the same time, I would also like to point out that it is such a nice development that people no longer need to be imprisoned in their own lives.
So, like you said, toxic relationships.
Yes,
Obviously, I mean, it takes a lot of effort when there are kids involved.
absolutely.
Effort and there's so much trauma when there are kids involved. Is it the reason why today's generation don't want to have kids?
Well, I do not know. I think there is this evolutionary impulse to have children, right? It's one of the greatest driving forces of human nature. I think a lot of people are able to circumvent that in some ways, and I do not know whether there are large-scale social phenomena at work. For example, the fact that we are 8 billion people today,
True.
is that making a difference? Because when our ancestors were living in tribes of 50 or fewer people, every child is a 2% addition to the population. And every child's birth is to be celebrated because now the tribe gets stronger. But maybe at some level we are looking at 8 billion people and saying, you know what, it's okay if a few 100,000 people don't have children.
Yeah.
It's probably good for the ecology, it's probably good for society at large.
The concept itself, not having children, like it's on the rise. Most couples, they don't want to have children, like I said, because of commitment. And also Nikhil Kamath, whom I really, really adore and follow him, he said he wouldn't get married, he would obviously have a partner. And no children, because at the end of your life, for example, when I am like, okay, done with life and then looking at my assets, whom shall I give it, okay, my will and everything. There's so much of, I mean to say, there's so much of insecurity when it comes to, okay, I need to give it to my children only. There's so much of pressure when it comes to crores of, rupees or whatever. When you look at the entire empire built by Kamath, he doesn't want to have children. The simple fact that he can live life at his will.
Yes. And such people not having children is actually good for society, because then that wealth gets distributed.
Yes.
We have an opportunity to address this glaring social inequity that we are experiencing. The second thing that you spoke about, for the longest of time, people have tried to find meaning in parenting, which is a great thing, because parenting can be extremely fulfilling, and nurturing a human being, helping them grow up and face the world, and watching them succeed can be, I think, exhilarating. But not everybody needs to want that meaning. Maybe they associate meaning with the work that they do, or maybe they find meaning in some other ways. And thankfully, we are now reaching a point wherein there is no need to follow a single template for life. And that is to be celebrated, because we have a diversity of individuals today, and we see so many interesting people around us.